Because their fear was Jawara was going to Senegal in a boat, and the next thing Senegal would probably attack the Gambia to get them out. So that was part of the fear. And in order to reach out to Senegal, they had to reach out to the ambassador who was present at the time. Now, they got the assurance, apparently, according to the narrations, that Senegal is not going to interfere on the sovereignty of the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Professor Cherno Omar Bari. He's always a guest on this program, and we are glad to have him again after his travel to Russia, you know, a war-torn Russia. So I don't know how he managed to dodge the bullets. Can you tell us about Russia? You know, people, it's a dreaded country now because they are at war with
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. For those who have not yet known who I am Cherno Omar Bari, a professor of comparative literature. Presently, I am working as the Deputy Executive Secretary at the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat, which is an interstate, the only ever interstate agency that is responsible to monitor the cooperation of two countries, and in this case, the Gambia and Senegal, to ensure that agreements that are signed, policies that are crafted that benefit the two countries are implemented to the dot. And this is our job, but also to ensure that the borderland communities are very sensitized on how they can live around the borders without creating any kind of conflict. But at the same time, out of passion, I'm also into literature, into research, into academia, and I hold the title of President of the Writers Association of the Gambia. And that links us now to the question you just raised, because as the President of the Writers Association of the Gambia, I was invited by the World Organization of Writers, the Secretary General presently, who is Margaret I, a Russian lady, to the second Congress of the World Organization of Writers. The first Congress happened in 2023. At the time, I wasn't informed, so I didn't go. But this time, they made sure I am informed. So I attended. The first one was in Abuja, Nigeria. This second one now was in Russia, in Moscow, to be more precise, fully funded by the Russian government. And we are hoping the third one would be in 2026, hopefully. And it will take place, hopefully, also in Brazil. Yes, when we arrive in Moscow, I think in the minds of everybody, because of the Ukrainian war, we should be expecting to be sometimes hiding in the bunkers, watching the skies for possible airstrikes, or maybe you would even find the city completely under fear and everything. You will be surprised to learn that there is no safer place in Moscow than Moscow today. I mean, if you are in New York, you think you are walking in New York safely. You are probably safer in Moscow. Everybody's going about their business. Everybody's happy. I went to the mini markets, supermarkets. I went to the malls. Honestly, I mean, some of them might not even know there's a war going on in Ukraine. Just to tell you how cool and quiet, I mean, how everybody's going about their businesses. Now, during the course of my service, I was called by the government of the Gambia, here to be more precise, by the President of the Republic of the Gambia, because there was a need for Gambia to appoint an individual who is required to have at least 3 sets of, how they call it, criteria or professionalism, or at least 3 sets of important, how they call it, qualifications, probably is the right word. Now, one, the person needs to be highly educated, meaning somebody who's, you know, very advanced in education. 2, the person needs, well, professor, we can say, but even a doctor or even a master's holder, still considered highly educated. And then the person needs to also be bilingual, perfectly bilingual, who could switch from English to French, French to English. That's ideal, not indispensable, but ideal for the position. And the third, the person needs to know very well the politics in Senegal. Now, the president thought I was very qualified for that. And then among many other people, but I think he picked me out knowing I was around and hopefully I could be of help, and then gave me the job. I know that others were on the line, you know. I mean, there are a lot of other qualified people, even people who are in the diplomatic field, who are bilingual, highly educated, who understand Senegal, who would have also fit the position. But the trust was given to me, and I'm humbled, honestly, to sit at the Senegalo-Gambian Permanent Secretariat, which is Secretariat headquarters based in the Gambia, to support the cooperation discussions, you know, primarily agreements that crafted between the Gambia and Senegal, to see how best the one people that is divided by two colonial masters, one people divided by two colonial masters, Gambia and Senegal, Gambians and Senegalese, who are all Wolof, Mandinka, Pular, Jola, Sarahule. You go to any of the two countries, you find these people there. They cross the borders. They are not even conscious of that separation of nationality, because they are one people. But because of the colonial inheritance, they are into two different distinct sovereign states. And therefore, these states need to see how best, in the interest of this one people, come together, you know, in different formats, in the area of facilitating trade, in the area of ensuring free movement of the people, in facilitating cohabitation, etc. But most importantly, ensuring that the borderland communities are protected and that they are working together. They understand that they have the same parents, they have the same family, which is in fact the truth.
If you recall, some years back, about 6, maybe now 7 years, we had an exclusive panel where you plus Hazum Sise, Sabali, and the late Ibuwage. We used the opportunity to talk about the Senegambia, the failed Senegambia Confederation. Little did you know that you are going to serve, you know, under this position which you are occupying now. In that panel, during that panel, our discussion centered on the, intricacies of the Senegambia Confederation, and also a memoir that was written by Abdou Diouf, where Hasum revealed that Abdou Diouf stated in that book that he trusted Yaya Jammeh more than Jawara. It was shocking to find out, you know. But as a scholar and also someone who was around in 1981, why do you think Abdou Diouf would kind of give Yaya Jammeh that rating more than Jawara, who was a civilian, a kind of, you know, perfect political gentleman?
Okay, I'm not very sure what standards or criteria Abdou Diouf might have used to give that rating to Jammeh higher than Jawara. It might be very difficult for many to understand this, because for those who know the two eras, they would know that Sadauda Kairaba Jawara was considered to be a human rights activist, promoter, who defended a lot of states around the world, who have, in fact, in his own efforts, promoted the idea of a human rights institution or a human rights commission for the African Union, which eventually became the African Center for Human Rights, or the African Commission for Human Rights, which is a branch of the African Union, through what we call the Banjul Charter in the 1980s, which led to the establishment of that, or to the hosting of that commission inside the Gambia here. And also knowing Jawara, I think the difficult relationship that Gambia and Senegal have had, for many of the analysts and critics, they would associate that more to our colonial inheritance. Because as a people, we are not in any way different. As a people, we have lived together. There are many Gambians who have got parents, families in Senegal. There are many Senegalese who have got parents and families inside the Gambia. And we speak the same language. You know, this is the truth. You go to Senegal, you speak Wolof, you don't need French, you don't need English. You can communicate effectively with anybody. To the whole issue of the difference. Because of the inheritance from the colonial masters type of governance, the colonial masters rules and regulations, constitution, etc. This made a distinction between Gambia of today and Senegal of today, in such a way that the governance system allow that separation. So therefore, to sit between these two countries and discuss any form of cooperation that would allow cohabitation, there must be what we call, if in French, un terrain d'entente, mean a common ground where both countries would agree to a compromise, to say, okay, these rules of ours, we will, lift them up for you. You will also lift up these rules so that we are on a common ground where we both agree in principle to move ahead together on this. Okay, Senegambian Confederation in 1981. It came, we all know, because of the revolution. I'm not sure that is the right word, but the Kukoy Sambasanyang massacre, I can say, in Banos, and the taking over of government when Jawara was away. And if you notice, the Senegalo-gambia Secretariat did not start in 2011, as it is stated in the very recent protocols which established the present one. No, it actually started in 1967 when Senghor and Jawara of the time agreed in principle to create a federation. Initially, it was a federation. But then when they knew the federation was difficult to manage, they agreed to a Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat, and they had nationals of both Gambia and Senegal occupying those positions, sitting there to manage the affairs of cooperation between the two countries. It wasn't as active as it was expected to be. And in 1981, Jawara, who knew that they have already signed what we call a defense agreement and also an economic agreement, the economic one never took off, but the defense agreement was lying down there waiting, and it was invoked in 1981 when Abdou Diouf was already the president. When it was invoked by Jawara, Abdou Diouf had no choice. His hands were tied. He had to accept because that agreement was still active. And this was the reason why they intervened and took Kukoy away. Now, going very fast on history, 9 years later, or let's say 8 years later, in 1989 to be more precise, because the Confederation really started in 1982, once they signed the agreement that they are going to establish a government, which is called a confederal government of two countries. Abdou Diouf, president of Senegal, because of their economic might, they will remain the president. Jawara will remain the vice president, and they will have ministers of state or ministers of specialized areas from both countries occupying the Secretariat. And the Secretariat of the Confederation, if I'm not mistaken, was based in Senegal. So this is how it was until 1989. And let me say until 1989, but not overshadowing or not forgetting the fact that during the course of these 8 years, it was not always as a smooth ride or an easy one, because Abdou Diouf and Jawara had to do pulls and push disagreements on many occasions on how to proceed on certain areas, in the area of trade, in the area of corporations, in many other areas. So there have been a lot of disagreements between their two countries, and these agreements have led to sometimes even confrontations that would eventually want to close the borders in some instances, etc., etc. Now, coming up to 1989, Abdou Diouf realized that really there was no interest continuing a confederation in which Senegal doesn't see much interest in it. So they withdrew by withdrawing their forces, and then they declared the confederation null and void. And then when Jawara had that, yes.
Okay, let me just halt you momentarily here. If you look at the scholarly work, there's so much written about the Senegambia Confederation and how it failed. But away from scholarly stuff, a lot of people believe that Abdou Diouf somewhat vented his spleen against Jawara when the coup in 1994, masterminded by the July 22nd revolutionaries, so-called revolutionaries, that is Jammeh and his cohort, Abdou Diouf, could have, played a part, but he wanted to kind of show Jawara what his anger at the failed Senegambia Confederation in 1989. What is your take on that?
Well, that will be difficult to establish. One thing is clear that can be established without doubt is that when the Confederation ended in 1989, any other agreement that was meant to be there anymore, whether it's a defense agreement, economic agreement, they all went null and void. What it meant was, if there is any problem in the Gambia, Senegal had no option. They were not obliged anymore like they were obliged in 1981 to support or defend the country. They are not. It was just going to be an option. If they do, they would have done that in good faith in ensuring also their interest. Because remember, if Gambia is within Senegal and there is instability in the Gambia, it has a serious effect on Senegal because the largest number of expatriates, if I'm not mistaken, from Senegal are found in the Gambia. Not only that, but we have seen the incident of the late 80s when Mauritania and Senegal got a big problem. And that is also, a lot of people even believe that that is part of what might have also caused the confederation in the Gambia to break. Because Mauritania, when Mauritanians were attacked by Senegalese and mutilated, and also Mauritanians, attacked Gambian, Senegalese, the Gambia didn't take a position to defend Senegal, according to historians. And here I'm just citing historians. I'm not speaking, according to historians, they didn't defend the position of Senegal. In fact, when Mauritanians ran into this country, the Gambia, they were protected by Jawara. And this during the Confederation, because this was around 1988. And naturally, when it was during the Confederation, Abdou saw that as a form of betrayal. That's one of the assumptions that we are given. Well, nevertheless, when the Confederation ended, there was no other obligation of Senegal to do anything to protect, their interest in the Gambia. So if there is an instability in the Gambia, they are not obliged to intervene like they were in 1981. So naturally, when in 1994, the soldiers took over the State House, the first country they called, according to the narrations provided by several eyewitnesses in that area, in that environment, was Senegal. Because their fear was Jawara was going to Senegal in a boat, and the next thing Senegal would probably attack the Gambia to get them out. So that was part of the fear. And in order to reach out to Senegal, they had to reach out to the ambassador who was present at the time. Now, they got the assurance, apparently, according to the narrations, that Senegal is not going to interfere on the sovereignty of the Gambia. They will not this time at all. Naturally, they would always cite that, they can always make reference.
So, now being in the Senegalo-gambia Secretariat, what in terms of efforts are you doing to make sure that that loose Senegambia Confederation is reactivated in some sense? Because correct me if I am wrong, Senegal seems to have a lot of interest in Little Gambia because there's a lot to be exploited. So what is your take on this issue?
Okay, first of all, it is important, and I'm very happy you asked that question. It's important that we are aware and we know what is the exact role of the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat, in regards to the relationship between Gambia and Senegal. Now, the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat, as we have said, has a long existed. And the most important reason was to ensure that agreements that are signed between these two countries are, followed up by the Secretariat. But that is just to simplify its role. Because if you look at Gambia and Senegal, and I repeat this because it is important to repeat, to emphasize, put emphasis on it. These are what we will call one people, two states. It's one people, two states. And this is why it is important to note that. Now, we all know that the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat has a role that is a bit similar to what you might call the ECOWAS in a way, or NEPAD that was created in a way, or AU. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that its role is to play, to do everything possible to ensure there is cooperation and agreement between these two states, that there is harmony in their policies, and there is a kind of an inter-exchange in many, many areas that would allow them to cohabit very well. Now, just to give you precisely what the task is. Number one, the Secretariat is an organ of liaison, consultation, and dialogue, which enables these two governments to mutually inform on common policies in the area of trade, fisheries, security, taxes, etc., or transportation, that they will implement and then harmonize these policies and measure their impact. This is one of the rules of the Permanent Secretariat. But also, it needs to implement the decision of one of its major body, which is called the Joint Consultative Commission. Now, this Joint Consultative Commission was established in 2006 by the two states to allow the two to be able to sit together, that meaning the ministers, their technical experts, and also presided over or chaired by Vice President of the Gambia and the Prime Minister of Senegal. These two are the highest bodies, in this Joint Consultative Commission. They sit and they preside over discussions in all those areas I mentioned, economic, social, cultural, to be able to see what updates there are. Now, once decisions are made during that discussion, these decisions are now implemented by the permanent secretariat. Now, it can also continue to consult, but remember, there's a new body that emerged that started in 2018 called the Presidential Council. Initially, it wasn't existing, but when it came after the protocols were signed, it also allowed what we call another step higher on the hierarchy. What that means now is that the Joint Consultative Commission, co-chaired by the Vice President and the Prime Minister, if they make some concessions, their agreements, etc., once the year ends, a report is derived from what has been followed up by the Permanent Secretariat, submitted to the experts of both countries, who will now look through that report, find out what has been said, what has been done. They will also submit a report to the Ministerial Council, which is now the Joint Consultative Commission, presided over the Vice President and the Prime Minister, and they will now make recommendations to the Presidential Council in the form of a communique that the Presidential Council will sign. The communique will be read to them and they will sign it. So that will be binding now as a common agreement of this.
A lot of people view the Senegal-Gambia relation as one-sided, that there is a lot for Senegal to exploit in the Gambia. For instance, the restive Casamance conflict that has been raging since in the 80s. So Senegal has more of an interest in the Gambia, and during Jammeh's 22-year reign, they didn't have that free will they expected. Abdou Diouf was disappointed with Jawara at some point, so Jammeh came and became, the Pan-Africanist, he claimed to be, and then making so that Senegal, which is bigger than us, is not going to walk in the park, it's not going to be like a walk in the park, and then they see us as minors or small people. So he took his stand to make so that Senegal interests do not, prevail overwhelmingly in the Gambia. So and then again, when Jammeh was largely removed by ECOMIP, but Senegal played a lead role because Senegal knows the Gambia inside and out. So how would you really respond to criticisms about the one-sided relationship between these two countries, that the Gambia and Senegal they say the equation is not 50-50. Some even say 75-25.
Well, I think people need to have their facts straight. You see, Gambia has only one border, and that is with Senegal. The reality is, it is also of economic benefit, of socio-cultural benefit, of political benefit, of security benefit to the Gambia to see that it has agreements with Senegal. You see, the point is, whatever we do here today, there must be an element of agreement with Senegal to allow prosperity to listen. So, yes, we can live in isolation as a country, but we are not an island. We are not an island. The only border we have is Senegal. So that's the reality. You see, we have to differentiate the chaff from the grains. We cannot continue to assume Senegal is imposing certain things on the Gambia. They might, yes, certainly they might, because they have the might of space. They have the might. They have the leverage that Gambia doesn't have. If we are going to be, if the Senegal is willing to bully the Gambia, they can bully the Gambia. That's the truth. I mean, if they are ready to bully the Gambia, what can Gambia do? I mean, we don't have the army to confront Senegal. We don't have the equipment militarily to confront Senegal. We don't have, what do we have? Economically, we are not even at par with Senegal economically. So what I'm trying to say is that if Senegal, if the perception is that Senegal is bullying the Gambia, I think what Gambians need to understand is that we are one people. That's important. I told you, yes, we have inherited some colonial inheritance, some colonial legacy. We cannot just brush off overnight. It cannot go like that so easily. But we are one people. You can't take that away from us. It doesn't matter what. If somebody in the Casamas, a Jola in the Casa in the Fonyi, has a relationship of the same mother or father, or the same father, or the same mother, or an uncle or whatever, paternal, maternal, in Casamas, and the same vice versa. If you go to Salom, somebody who is a father in the Salom, in the side of the Gambia, has a parent on the other side. You cannot help it. I have gone through the borders, and I can tell you, it's incredible what we have. That is a richness. We are one people. Yes, we are separated by the borders. Yes, these borders make every of those states sovereign states. We cannot take that away. What do we have to do then? Because at political level, they can see the distinction.
But there is no parity there.
Naturally, yes, the countries are not the same economically. Let's be honest. I mean, if you look at the wealth-wise, Senegal is bigger, so it has more wealth. It is bigger, it has more resources. So you cannot compare the two. It's not possible. In what level? Politically, they have their own political way of life. We have our own political way of life. So there are a lot of things that are different between these two countries at the level of our colonial inheritance. But there is not much that is different at our socio-cultural level. So what I'm driving at is, let's look at things that could be of mutual benefit to us, focus on it, maximize on that, and keep not raising our ego too much by saying, yeah, they are going to bully us, so we are also going to, do this and do that. And then, why are we doing that? To what interest? I think that's the same ego that has pulled Africa back from uniting and becoming one of the most powerful continents on the earth.